Welcome to Fraud Expose. My name is Lori Maddock, and today I'll be speaking with cyber fraud experts about online real estate and title company scams. Win, why don't you introduce yourself first, and then Jared, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Win Win. I'm a founder of Cyber Armor, where we focus in the dark web.
Hi, and I'm Jared Zarmbinski. I'm a fraud investigator at USAA.
Okay. Well, for our listeners, if you want to avoid fraud or know what to do if you've been a victim, stay with us. Don't get ripped off. So I'm going to tell you guys a little story. Years ago, I had a neighbor whose mother was ripped off to the tune of $140,000 when purchasing a home. Somehow, a cyber criminal either got into her email or the title company's email and changed the routing number for the purchase money to be sent to. The title company, the FBI, and the bank were all contacted after she received the real email because the title company said, "Where's the money?" That's when they realized there was a problem. Unfortunately, all of the money was lost because it was discovered to have been wired to Nigeria and deemed unrecoverable. So that story scared me so much that when my husband and I went to purchase our home, we actually went to the bank, met with my banker, and had him call the title company to confirm before wiring funds. So I guess my questions are, first, how can a cyber criminal get into a title company? How are these people able to find these emails and change the information so that, the home buyer doesn't even realize it because it looks real?
Sure. Well, there's a few different ways that this happens, and these real estate scams are unfortunately quite common. I've dealt with a number of cases involving them myself personally, and sometimes it can be a spoofed email, just something that looks really similar to that title company's email, but it's off by one character. It's got like a different number. The letter E is the number three or some kind of a thing like that, just to make it
Okay.
slightly different. They might actually create an email account somehow to make it to mimic a legitimate title company or realtor's email. But in certain cases, people are outsmarted even still by the fraudster when the actual legitimate email account becomes compromised. And that's the scary reality, is that's something that's really out of your control as the buyer of a potential property, the potential buyer of a property. And so, and it's much more rare, especially as, I want to say in the past several years and during the, roller coaster of the real estate market, nationwide, as
Mhm.
we all are familiar with, there became quite a huge fraud trend involving these types of called BEC scams. That stands for business email compromised scams. And this is what happens when the email account actually gets compromised. It's possible it's a rogue employee. A lot of people immediately like kind of assume it's somebody going rogue at the title company or something like that. But usually what it is somebody was able to hack that title company's email account, get access to that, and therefore see correspondence with the title company.
Mhm.
Um, there was a recent story on CNBC involving a Silicon Valley executive who lost 400,000 just about due to this, and she was actually replying to an email. I believe it said in the article, a previous email that she had, previous correspondence with the title agent, and was corresponding on that same email thread, and was instead presented with incorrect account routing information, and shot it off and found out the same way, because then the title company
Yeah.
asks for the money again.
And the person's already thinking that. Now, when we were talking a little before the show, do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's for like as Jerome mentioned, there's a variety method of how criminal taking over the account. Like um many of them target business, right? So they're using malware to phishing to steal the username and password. And once they're able to access that, they're able to log in and monitor the activities. I seen people get their email compromised, and the hacker basically revealed all the incoming email and able to edit it or remove it. So those type of risk is we constantly have to monitor for a huge amount like purchasing a home. They need to be a little bit more verifying who you send to, make sure that all the number is correct, especially for wire, right? Because wire kind of like a one-way process where if you miss a number, likely it's gonna be gone as well. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, and as
Yeah,
far as the bank side of things, like those types of transactions, as Gwen's mentioning, they happen super fast. As a fraud investigator who's worked these cases and deals with, the recovery in some aspects as well. The banks do try to recover the funds once a wire recall is issued. The bank, communicates with the other bank involved and tries to recover that. But unless you send one of those off, within I've seen it
minutes.
recovered maybe within hours if the real customer calls in and says, "Hey, that wasn't me," or whatever the situation may be, tries to issue a recall. I've seen them get it back. Sometimes it's only a partial amount though.
Yeah.
I've seen people recover the entire amount or just shy of it in many cases as well. But you have to do it immediately because of how fast that transaction is. And the banks, they're really only verifying the account and routing information. They're just a facilitator of the transactions. So that's why they can't really be held liable for a lot of these situations,
Well,
unfortunately.
that was exactly my next question. I mean, why are the routing numbers not identified in some way and confirmed with the bank? I mean, that's the reason when my husband and I bought our house, I was so nervous from knowing a lot of these stories and what happened with my neighbor's mother that we actually went to the bank, and then my banker actually got on the phone and confirmed everything with the title company, with the right phone number to make sure that it was correct. Um, but what, if you have a routing number, you go to the bank and you're gonna, you're a home buyer and you're gonna send the money via wire. Why are those routing numbers not identified in some way and confirmed by the bank? Like, why would the bank not know? I don't know if routing numbers or anything really like phone numbers. I don't remember. But
Well,
if
I
the
would say
bank
that they
identified
are.
it, yeah, like if they identified a number as saying, hey, this number is going to Nigeria and it's not going somewhere in the United States, well, where's the fraud department of the bank checking out those routing numbers? I guess is my question.
Sure, and we are, and when I say we, I, kind of just referring to the banks generally. Of course, I work at USAA Bank, but the views that I'm expressing are that of my own and not affiliated with them directly. And speaking of banks more largely, though, having worked at other banks as well and communicated with other professionals in the industry, the bank's really only verifying that to ensure it's a real bank. It's a real thing. Now, to your point, if it happens to be a bank located in Nigeria and the customer service, the wire, service personnel seeing that, sees that, this is where training kind of comes into play, right? At an organization, you need to train your people to
Yeah.
recognize red flags. So, maybe that comes off as a red flag, or maybe not. I've seen very legitimate purchases, in fact, made in Nigeria, vacation homes, bungalows, what have you. Some people are from there, immigrants, and they have
Right.
family over there. They'll go back. They're purchasing real estate. They're sending it to their brother's, real estate company so that the family makes some money off of it in the process and stuff. And there's times where those transactions are monitored in many cases by the banks, but at the same time, real estate purchases kind of are, the purchase of private property. And a lot of those transactions go through lawyers. They go through all kinds of different, what we would call gatekeepers in the fraud industry,
Right.
accountants, lawyers, folks like that. Sometimes they'll do it under an LLC, things of that nature. And so the banks do a lot to monitor these transactions, but some of them are so private and personal that really, it's hard for us to really know for sure that it's suspicious just going off of the account and routing number and name of the title company or the address or
Yeah.
whatnot. In many cases where the person was scammed out of a lot of money, sent false wiring instructions, they would use the address, the actual address of the legitimate title company as the wiring address, but it would
Right,
be some made up LLC registered in some other state that wouldn't be, really tied to anybody. And that's usually how a lot of those are perpetrated. So yeah, and going back to your point of how, how people can, what we can do to avoid this. I always tell people, it's most people don't do these types of purchases too often where they have to shoot off a wire for some exorbitant amount of money unless they're purchasing a home or a car or something. But
right,
I just always tell people to verify it, even if it's a tedious phone call that you have to make to the title company agent, you want to verify verbatim that account and routing information. And when you do get sent the email by a title company, it comes with the federal, FBI standard issue, don't do this, like be aware of fraud risk with sending a wire
right.
instructions to do that. And a lot of people just, don't worry about it or they think that they're in contact with them. But it's always good to verify that, not just the email address, but go ahead and call them, call everybody involved with the transaction. Just make sure, okay, I got this number. This is the right number, right? This is the bank I'm sending this to for those guys, right? And they'll be happy to
Yeah.
buy it because a lot of them see this all the time and take it seriously too. And there's only so much that they can do and be held liable for as well. So.
You guys will probably laugh at this, but my thought was wire them $1. Just wire $1.
You
And
could
then
always
if
do
you
a
get a,
test charge, I mean, that's
yeah,
hey, when you link bank accounts anyway, that's what they do, and that's what a lot of folks do to
okay,
test things. So
is to test
Yeah,
it, right? Yeah. Win, any
yeah,
comments to that?
yeah, I agree. I mean, wire is a very old school way of transferring money. I think, yeah, there's a lot of security issues that it need to be solved. So, so yeah, I agree. I mean, like that's one of the things like with crypto blockchain, right? Is much more secure and much more safer in a sense from that. Because I remember only a month or two ago when I have to pay someone and I have to wire them, spending about an hour, writing that, payment or transfer of all the
Okay,
banks, all the entity, all the information. And at the end of the transaction is basically I have to agree saying that once I agree to this, anything happened to the money, it's my fault, right?
uh,
So yeah, that's a challenge with the wire. So like George said, we have to verify and verify and verify.
you really have to be sure. Yeah, you really do.
yeah,
And unfortunately, for certain transactions, if you're sending a large amount, that's really kind of
Yeah,
the only way to do it. Like,
yeah,
especially if it's just to a certain bank that only accepts
right.
them.
Well, we're all on the older side, but you have younger people who have absolutely no idea probably of what this even involves because you're not taught this in school. And
Right.
and so,
Unfortunately, several victims that I've seen have been and younger folks, buying their first home, and it's
we're
tragic the impact
seniors.
that's their life savings as far as they've been saving up for the good, initial chunk of their accumulation years of their life. And then just in a matter of seconds, it's just poof, gone.
Right. Well, I mean, it happens a lot. I read a lot of these stories. Unfortunately, a lot of times the banks don't want to give the money back. I know like Congress is looking at passing laws, like the banks should be responsible, have some responsibility or liability in doing that. But why is it such a battle for the victim to get refunded under the Electronic Funds Act? Um, that's a question that I can't answer. I know that most people who get their money back are doing it because they're going to the TV news investigators and because it would be an embarrassment to the company to have a story written about the fact that someone got screwed over and the bank didn't check anything out and it makes the bank look bad. So when they go to the news media, they seem to be able to get their money back. But I mean, don't you think that there should be some law to protect the consumers from losing their life savings? And unfortunately, the way I look at it is the bank does have some liability if you're using that bank to wire the funds because they are still involved in the wiring of it. But what are your thoughts? Like,
Well,
what do you do if this happens to you?
I would have to say, working at a bank and having worked for many banks, I guess I have a few things to say about that. One, I would say that a reprioritization definitely needs to take place both within banks, but also within law enforcement agencies, especially, I would say, federal law enforcement
Yeah,
agencies, to actually more aggressively go after, at the very least, prioritizing organized criminal conspiracy type cases involving these types of thefts. But any of this kind of stuff, any kind of real estate related scam, wire, fraud case really should be prioritized more. There should be a reporting that, just that gets prioritized with the law enforcement agencies, be it state or federal. As far as what the banks can do, you know, uh, anything from what I was saying earlier, as far as just having the wiring department well trained, to recognize red flags and to offer many instances and many opportunities to correct course if the person feels queasy about it. I know that many banks will often play several disclaimers, which obviously it's easy to say that that's just protecting the bank from liability, but it's also reminding the customer, hey, there's a lot of high risk for fraud and scams as it relates to these types of transactions. So, have you verified these wiring instructions? Do you know for sure? Have you met this person in person? Asking these types of questions are all good, but at the end of the day, it's an individual decision to send that wire. And that's why I would say, thirdly, that, the banks really can't be held liable for that. I mean, I know that it's easy to be like, well, hey, this was fraud, give me my money back, but I just don't know how that comes out of the bank's pocket. I mean, they're not the ones that took the money. Now, they do have recovery teams that go after it. Again, if
okay,
you would want to confirm receipt of that wire. I know that's what I did when I bought my home, is I verified receipt of it, and if it wasn't there yet, I just kept calling and calling until I confirmed it. Just doing things like that, just to be really careful about it, to make sure, because otherwise, you won't find out about it till later. Whether it's the bank or the real estate folks. Now, a lot of banks also, their wiring departments will have, various other security measures, I must say. Some banks, it's really easy to shoot off a wire. They won't ask any questions. Others, they might actually call you back, from your number on file to verify it really is you, or they might do
yeah,
kinds of steps like that. And so it's something to consider with your banking relationship, and then just also to consider all those aspects of the transaction process, and at what points you can call to verify the recipient, you can call back to the bank, and you can kind of verify that throughout those stages.
got it. And when, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, another perspective is privacy, right? I mean, do we want the bank to ask us who we sending to or what we doing with, the money? So those type of thing is prefer not to, right? Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
some of these real estate purchases can be very personal in nature, so.
Yeah. Well, I'd still go with the send $1 and see if it gets to the real title
yeah,
company before I send the rest of the money.
Hey, even if you got to
Uh,
pay that $20-$40 wire fee or whatever to
yeah, it's
send
still
it
worth
out
it
there,
because yeah, you wouldn't risk losing the rest of your money. So as far as reporting, I'm guessing that the FBI would be the main authority to report this to, correct?
So, the same as most scams, anything done, via wire or, by use of the mail or telephone, obviously is a federal offense. But with wire transfers and any kind of cybercrime like that, you would want to go fill out an IC3 report. I would also recommend, just with anything, even if it was a guy breaking into your car outside or something, call the local police and file a report, get all of that paperwork, all that documentation. Working at a bank, most banks, fraud departments have a law enforcement liaison team. If not a dedicated team, then they have trained personnel organized in some form or fashion to field incoming subpoena requests for those documents and those transaction information. And it happens all the time, where even local law enforcement will send us subpoenas, other banks subpoenas all the time, as it relates to
Okay,
wire transfers or any other kind of financial crime like that, to receive information on the recipient and to try to go from there.
good to know. Win, any last comments?
verify, verify, verify. So
All right. Well, I think you guys gave really great advice. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you again soon.
thank you.
Sure, thanks.